Recently, I was wondering what games could you play and actually have a enjoyable, smooth gaming experience with integrated graphics. And since I had the Ryzen 5 5600G, I just wanted to test what games could you actually enjoy, or just I only tested a handful of games. I mean, I'm not going to test all the games. I only tested a handful of games that I thought might work, and some games I already had installed, and I just downloaded some that I would think might work. And I was kind of surprised a little bit. There are definitely more games, a lot more games that you can play with just integrated graphics than I first initially thought. And I only went through like 7 games, and they're not even like the most popular games right now at this second. Like, I didn't test Warzone, though I'm sure that probably wouldn't run very well. I didn't do Valorant because Valorant runs on everything. I mean, it runs out of potato. I didn't do Fortnite because that also can run on everything. I mean, it has performance mode, which makes it run on basically everything. So I didn't test those 2 games, and I also didn't. I've never played Valorant, and I will never play Valorant. And I also didn't. I didn't have Fortnite installed, and I also don't really play Fortnite. So I didn't test those 2 games, though I know someone's probably thinking, why didn't you test those 2 games? That's why I didn't test those 2 games. I'm just going to tell you right now, the games that I tested were probably not what you might expect me to test, but let's get into it. Now, the first game that I tested was Bloons Tower Defense Battles 2, because I've been playing it a lot recently. It's kind of addicting, and it's pretty fun, even though they have slight pay-to-win. I'm going to say the slight pay-to-win mechanics, because you can buy tiers of monkeys, but it's not really pay-to-win, but it's kind of. But we're not here to talk about that. But this game ran really smooth. I mean, I know it's also a mobile game, so of course it's probably gonna run smooth, but yeah, there was absolutely no issues with playing this game whatsoever. You could play this game all day if you wanted without a graphics card, with just integrated graphics. And you actually there's actually slowdowns in the game, but it's actually not because of the integrated graphics or anything. It's just this game's, I don't know, just this game in general, for some reason, when there's like a ton of balloons on the screen, it always slows down no matter what. At least most of the time it does. Even when I was playing, when you play on your phone, when you play on integrated graphics, when you play on a graphics card, there's just random slowdowns sometimes. But for the actual game, it runs pretty smooth. And I also was recording through Steam Stream, or Steam Remote Play. That's what it is, not Steam Stream. Steam Remote Play. So it actually says 60 FPS, which again, it's fine for this type of game. You really don't need a lot of FPS for this type of game. But it says 60, but it's actually like, you can get like 100, I think it was like 120, and then when I did Steam Stream, it went down to 60. So either way, this game is a smooth, fun experience. And if you never played Bloons Tower Defense, I recommend giving it a try, because it's actually addicting and pretty fun. I mean, I've been playing Bloons Tower Defense for a while, but yeah, it's a super fun game. Now I know what you're saying. What is this 2010 screen recording software / amazingness that you got going on right now? And I recorded like this. I recorded a camera pointed at the screen, because if I used normal stuff like OBS or something, or even MSI Afterburner's capture or something, it would lower performance. And I know what you're thinking, why didn't you just use a capture card? Well, I don't have one, at least not at the moment. I don't have one. I think I actually got rid of it because I didn't think I would ever need it again. But yeah, but anyways, the next game I tried was Left 4 Dead 2, and Left 4 Dead 2 at the highest settings, 1080p, the highest settings. The only thing that's lowered is MSAA. That's the only thing. It's turned like to 2 or off or something like that, because that's the only setting you really have to lower, and that's basically with every game, because that setting's just very demanding on your system. And but without that, with all the other settings set to high, you can play Left 4 Dead 2 at an average of 75 frames per second most of the time, just with integrated graphics. So this game runs pretty smoothly. So if you have integrated graphics and you want to play some Left 4 Dead 2, that is going to be a 100% good, fun experience. I also haven't played Left 4 Dead 2 in a while, so playing this game again was pretty fun. And it's definitely a lot different than Back 4 Blood. I know they're kind of like the same game, but I still find Left 4 Dead 2 much more fun than Back 4 Blood. Actually, now that I think about it, you might actually be able to get way more than 75 frames per second if you lower the settings, or even at high settings if you turn all the anti-aliasing off and you disable vertical sync. I think I actually forgot to disable vertical sync for this game, so it was locked to 75 frames per second. But I mean, if you're playing with integrated graphics and you're getting 75 frames per second, that's pretty good anyway. So that's why, now that I think of it, that's why I think it was locked at 75 frames per second. But still, that's still really good at high settings, so there's nothing wrong with that. So the next game is Battlefield Bad Company 2, mostly because I recently just played through this entire game, and it made me start to wonder if you could play through this entire game with integrated graphics, and you definitely can. If you just lower like shadows and effect quality, and again, you turn like MSAA to off. Actually, you can't turn it off in this game, so you gotta turn it to like 1 or 2. If you do that, you will get like 70 to 80 frames a lot of the time in this game, but there will be some drops in this game, unfortunately. I mean, you can turn down the settings even more if you want to. Most of the time it's going to be a smooth, good experience, but if you get into some locations or some spots during the game in multiplayer or in single player where there's just a ton of explosions and you're like right next to the explosions, it's going to drop below 60 sometimes. But most of the time you're going to have at least above 60 frames per second, mostly in the 70s again. So it's going to be a good experience if you want to play Battlefield Bad Company 2. But again, I know what you're thinking. Battlefield Bad Company 2, that's kind of an older game, you know, but hey, it's a fun game and it runs pretty well. The next game I tried was Borderlands, the first Borderlands game to be specific, because I thought if you can't run the first Borderlands game smoothly, then there's no point of trying the second or the third one, even though the second one's my favorite one. So I went into Borderlands. I lowered the settings, pretty much lowered every single thing, because that's what you have to do to try and stay above 60 frames per second. Now this is 1080p again. All these games are tested at 1080p to try and get them to work. And this game, even with pretty much all the settings at low 1080p, you still drop from 60 frames per second. But it is a pretty smooth experience when playing. Like I know the graph has some spikes in it and it's not hitting 60 frames per second most of the time, but it felt smooth while playing it, which is weird. I'm not sure, but it felt smooth and I didn't find it that bad to play this game. Now, the only setting I left on max was textures, because the textures just look really, really bad if they're on low. So I just left the textures maxed out and then changed everything else to low, and still couldn't get 60 frames per second on average, but it was in the 50s most of the time, so it was smooth 50s, I guess, in this game. So Borderlands is playable, but if you want 60 frames per second, you'll have to go even lower than all low settings and 1080p. And I'm actually surprised by this, because Borderlands is an older game, and it doesn't seem like it would be that hard to run, to be honest with you. It doesn't seem like it would be that hard to run, especially on all low settings, but for some reason it's harder to run than Battlefield Bad Company 2. So the next game that I tried was Team Fortress 2, and I know what you're thinking. Team Fortress 2 kind of runs on everything, or at least you would think, right? But here's the thing. It kind of does run on almost everything, but I thought it would run better than it did. I mean, I could turn all the settings to low, which I didn't do. I kept them all on high, or the highest settings. I only turned MSAA off, or low, I think. I always turn MSA either off or the lowest it can go. I'm not exactly sure which one I did in this game, but you're always going to want to turn that off or pretty low, and because it'll just give you a massive performance boost. But yeah, I thought it would be like up in the hundreds, but even I mean, I guess it could be if you're on all low settings, but on high settings you get like 70 frames per second. Sometimes it'll go into 80, and there's even sometimes where it will drop into the 40s and 30s. But it's also, I don't know, it's not that consistent either. Like when you're getting into a fight, sometimes it'll go from 70 to 30 to 40 to 70 to 60. It's just like all over the place while playing this game. I don't know, it's very odd because Team Fortress 2 is an old game. Well, it's an older game. I'm not sure exactly when it came out. It came out like 2007, I think. 2007, 2008, I'm pretty sure, somewhere around there. And I would just think that it would run better than it does, but I guess the updates that they did to this game just ruined performance or something. Cause I don't, maybe it's just me, but I expected this game to be super smooth, because normally Valve games are just super smooth. Or normally, at least they're older ones. Like if you go to play Half-Life, which I didn't test, but if you go to play Half-Life, you can basically play that on anything. That game will run on almost anything. It just runs super smooth. So the next game that I tried is Risk of Rain 2, and the reason I downloaded this game and tried it is because of its art style. And for some reason, I thought in my head that this game would be easier to run than some of the last few games that I tested because of its art style, and it's simplistic but still good looking, stylistic art style. And I was dead wrong. I was completely wrong on this. There is, unless you go all low settings and lower the resolution below 1080p, you cannot get 60 frames per second in this game unless you do that, because I had all low settings, everything was on low, everything, and it was 1080p, all low settings, and still not able to get at a minimum of 60 frames per second, which really surprised me. Maybe it shouldn't have surprised me, but it really surprised me because I just thought this game was easier to run, but I guess not. I didn't go lower resolution, but I'm pretty sure if you go down to like 720p or something, you might be able to get 60 frames per second most of the time. So yeah, I mean, this game really doesn't run that smooth, or will give you a 60 plus frames per second experience at 1080p with integrated graphics. And this game actually surprised me more than Team Fortress 2, because I thought Team Fortress 2 would run super smooth, and technically it did, but this game, why is this game so hard to run? Someone explain to me, because I don't know, just looking at it, it just doesn't seem like it would be that hard to run, but I'm wrong on that. Now, the next game that I chose was because it was already installed. Not really sure else why I chose this game. Maybe you can come up with an answer for that, but I chose the game Lo-Fi Ball to be next and to be the last on this list. And I expected this game to run at 75 frames per second because, well, first off, this game is locked to whatever your refresh rate of your monitor is. So if you have a 144 hertz monitor, then it'll be locked at 144 hertz or refresh rate, whatever hertz. My goodness, frames. I'm getting all my words confused right now for some reason. But since this monitor that I was using for the testing the integrated graphics was 75 hertz, it was locked to 75 frames per second. So this game also, Lo-Fi Ball, also runs pretty smoothly on integrated graphics. You can play through all of the levels and it will basically stay at 75. There's only a few exceptions, with those exceptions being levels that have lots of glass in them. So if you play the level called Glass, or you play another level that has lots of glass in it, then performance will slightly drop in some of the levels that have more glass. And then if you play the glass level, performance will actually almost just go to a complete stop. I mean, I'm talking in the 15s, in the 10s, the 15s. If you're on the glass level specifically, only that level, I'm just pointing out, only the glass level that's labeled glass will the game perform that badly. But every other normal level, it will at least be at 75 frames per second, and possibly even higher because it runs pretty smoothly. So that's a good thing. One more game. I forgot to record this one, but I tested Black Ops 2, and Black Ops 2 with mostly high settings but low shadows. I think it was low shadows, no MSAA, both of those settings low, and MSAA was completely off. And with those settings, with those two settings, you can get at least 60 frames per second basically all of the time while playing Black Ops 2. And I played some zombies, and the frame rate did change depending where you were, like on what map you were on, but you can get more frames on like Nuketown obviously than Buried, but it will stay above 60 most of the time with those settings. At first, I was just testing with all high settings with MSAA off, and it was getting 60 frames per second most of the time when I was playing Nuketown, but then I went to a different map, and unless you have shadows low, the frames really drop. So if you're going to play Black Ops 2 with integrated graphics, for some reason, then you're going to want to turn your shadows to low and MSAA off. I'm also just going to put a list on the screen right now of games that I've also tried, but just do not give you a good playable experience. I'm talking less than 30 frames per second, or the graphics are just so downgraded that it's hard to play because it's so, I don't know, it's just so terrible looking. And I mean that in like an absolutely terrible looking, like it's super blurry and pixelated and you almost can't even see. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. I know this video is very different style, just a very different video than what I normally do, but I just decided to do it because I was going to test integrated graphics in some games anyway, and maybe I'll test more games with integrated graphics because it's kind of interesting to see what integrated graphics can do. But for now, that's going to be it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, leave a comment below, tell me what you guys think about the games that we tested, the integrated graphics or integrated graphics in general, and maybe any other games that you want me to try with integrated graphics, and we'll see what happens. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.